Hello and welcome to India's World. Indus Water Commissioners from India and Pakistan are likely to meet later this month for their routine annual meeting. The meeting had been postponed after India declared that blood and water cannot flow together in the wake of the terrorist attack on Uri. The Indus Waters Treaty, signed in 1960, is a river-sharing agreement between India and Pakistan and has worked quite smoothly between the two countries for the last 57 years. Under the agreement, the control over the three eastern rivers, the Beas, the Ravi and the Satluj, was given to India, while control over the three western rivers, the Indus, the Chenab and the Jhelum, was given to Pakistan. The World Bank is the designated facilitator for the agreement. The Indus Treaty does not permit India to build storage dams on the western rivers, that is, the rivers meant for Pakistan, but allows for limited use of their waters for power generation through run-of-the-river schemes. Pakistan has objected to the Baglihar run-of-the-river project, as well as two other similar projects, the Kishanganga hydroelectric plant on the Kishanganga or Neelam River, a tributary of the Jhelum, and the Ratle project on the Chenab. Pakistan is seeking World Bank help for arbitration, saying that these projects are not justified under the treaty. The Indus Water Commission is mandated to meet once a year or whenever either country demands it. If it had not met before March 31st, that could have jeopardized the future of the treaty. To discuss why India has stepped back from its rhetoric on the Indus Waters Treaty and to discuss cross-border sharing of water between India and Pakistan, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador T.C.A. Raghavan, a former High Commissioner of India to Pakistan. He has also served as High Commissioner to Singapore and has been posted in Indian missions to UK, Bhutan and Kuwait. We have with us Ambassador Vivek Kajju, a former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. He's been India's ambassador to Myanmar, Thailand and Afghanistan. He was in charge of overseeing the Pakistan desk in the Indian Foreign Office for a record number of years, 6 years. Right, Vivek? And then we are also lucky to have with us Mr. Tilak Deveshwar. He is a former civil servant who retired as a special secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat. Tilak Deveshwar's book, Pakistan Courting the Abyss, has been described even by Pakistani reviewers as easily the best book on Pakistan. I welcome you gentlemen to this discussion. Mr. Raghavan, let me begin with you. Do you think that the Indian government has chosen wisely to step back from statements such as blood and water cannot flow together and allow the Indus Water Commissioners to meet?
Well, to my mind, all statements from India and in Pakistan about the other country have to be seen in their particular context. Certainly, tempers are very high in India after the major terrorist attacks from Pakistan on us. And at that time, there was certainly a view that we cannot allow existing treaty mechanisms to go on even while everything else around it has changed. So I think that was the context of the statement then, and to read more than that into it would be to mistake the real situation as it exists.
Okay, Vivek, should this move be seen as a slight softening of the Indian stance towards Pakistan, coming as it does after reduction LOC firing, the regular exchange of nuclear lists, the release of prisoners by both sides, and India being part of the consensus to elect the Pakistani nominee as SAARC Secretary General last week?
Look, India had followed a twin approach on IWT after the Uri attack. The Prime Minister himself has never said that the IWT was in jeopardy, the treaty was in jeopardy. He said repeatedly that we will use all the waters assigned to us under the treaty, and for this purpose I think some kind of a committee was set up. Second, after a meeting which was held 8 days after the Uri attack, sources told the media, as you've quoted, blood and water cannot flow together, and that the commission can only meet in an atmosphere free from terror. So obviously we have sort of resiled from that position, and we are letting the treaty work because there is a dispute which is going on, and which I think will now be retaken at the bilateral level.
Tilak, perhaps India did not want to discuss Indus Waters when there was terrorism, but we have discussed Indus Waters with Pakistan even when the two countries have been at war. So those meetings have taken place continuously. Do you think once again we are seeing an attempt that some events such as exchange of prisoners and some agreements such as exchanging nuclear lists, holding Indus Waters Commissioners meetings should be kept above politics?
Yes, I think so. I think it was never India's intention that we will jeopardize the treaty itself. I think a strong signal was sent to Pakistan after the Uri attack that, look, don't push us because of the water, blood and water. But the intention was not to jeopardize the treaty. And as you rightly said, if the meeting was not held before 31st of March, the treaty itself would have been in jeopardy. So therefore, I think India has done a very wise thing. You've given a signal that don't push us, and yet we are not wanting to jeopardize the treaty at all.
Vivek?
Treaties don't get into jeopardy if you postpone a meeting.
But isn't it mandated under one of the articles?
Of course, yes. The treaty, there can be a mandate that they'll meet once a year. But if they don't meet for a few months, heavens don't fall, the treaty doesn't crumble.
Have these meetings been skipped earlier also?
Meetings have been postponed in the
yes,
past too.
yes, of
It
course.
is not as if every scheduled meeting has always taken place
But
as per
mutually.
agreed.
Mutually.
But Raghavan, do you think that by sending a signal of not holding or postponing the meeting of the Indus Water Commissioners, the attempt was to temporarily deny Pakistan a bilateral grievance redressal mechanism and nothing more than that?
I don't think that was the intention. I think the intention was, as Mr. Devesar said, to send a signal, to send a message, and thereby put pressure tactically. Now, to some extent, that pressure may have worked, but the intention certainly never was that you walk away from the treaty in its entirety, because that has various other implications which were possibly never fully intended.
So Vivek, how has the pressure worked? How would we know that this pressure actually worked? It fulfilled the objective that India wanted.
Look, it's all part of political management, of domestic public opinion after a terrorist attack. So the only way you can interpret that particular comment, blood and water, meetings in an atmosphere free from terror, can be is that it was part of that exercise which has been going on since ever.
I understand that. I'm merely asking, let me take this to Tilak, what pressure was put on Pakistan? Did Pakistan feel under pressure?
Yeah.
Pressure is what you feel. Did Pakistan feel the pressure and how was it manifested?
You see, I've been monitoring Pakistan media before and after Uri, and after this threat was sort of there. The awareness in the Pakistani media, at least, in the various talk shows, about how sensitive and vulnerable they were to water, especially if anything happens with the Indus Water Treaty. I've never seen that before.
Okay.
So they certainly felt this pressure that were India to do something, and of course what India could do, nobody, but they certainly felt the pressure.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the Indian decision to attend the Indus Waters Commission meeting in Pakistan. Raghavan, why has Pakistan called the treaty an inefficient forum for resolving water issues? And why does it want the Indus Waters negotiations to be included in the composite dialogue? Because there has been such a suggestion from Pakistan also.
Well, the Pakistanis say various things at various points of time about that India is not honouring the treaty, that it should be discussed at a political level, etc., etc. I think at the base level, they know that they have a very good treaty which works to protect Pakistan's interests as a lower riparian as no other instrument would. So I would not take these statements and speeches very seriously. I think they know they've got a very good deal, and certainly they should try to do what they can to safeguard it.
Vivek, would Pakistan be in serious trouble if India observed the treaty in letter and spirit and started fully utilizing the waters allocated to India? Because India is allowed to use 20% of the water of the western rivers, and we use only about 4% as of now.
I don't think they will be in serious trouble. The real issue in Pakistan is the mismanagement of water. Pakistani political personalities of the saner kind have always admitted this, including their former foreign minister Qureshi, who said there's no point in blaming India for this. So the treaty, if India observes it in letter and spirit and uses all the waters assigned to it, it will not damage Pakistan.
But
in
wouldn't
any
flow of the
significant measure.
these rivers change? If 20% of that
but I
water
don't know
is
whether
used for consumptive purposes.
No, but I don't know whether it's as high as 20%. I think it is a lower figure.
Much lower.
Much lower?
It's about 3 to 4%. If
Is
I'm
what
right.
we are using just now.
No, 3 to 4% is the water that is assigned to you, because the western rivers are meant for non-consumptive purposes.
Yeah.
So if you use all those waters, you are not harmed, and if you use all the waters of the eastern rivers, which are yours in any case under the treaty, then it will be appropriate.
Okay.
Pakistan has a very generous deal in this.
Yeah.
If I could just, before
please.
you
Yeah.
India is allowed to use 3.6 million acre feet of water
Right.
of the western rivers, not 20%.
Okay.
But it will affect Pakistan because, the structure of agriculture in Pakistan is such that you need waters in the Chenab and Jhelum. Chenab, Jhelum and the Kabul River are what are called early risers. They start getting water in March. That is the time when the kharif sowing of sugarcane and cotton takes place in Pakistan. If this water is stalled, and if Afghanistan goes ahead and builds its dams on the Kabul River and stores about 4.5 million acre feet of water in Kabul River, it will really impact the kharif season sowing in Pakistan.
No, but they
And that's going to make a difference.
no, but they can create storage facilities which they are not doing.
But they could have
So-
done it from the 70s.
No,
the
no, but
fact
that
is they
is-
have not done it.
That is precisely what I am saying, that the treaty per se and India's use of water does not damage them.
Okay, so why has the Indus Waters Treaty come under so much strain in the last couple of decades? Is it because of inefficient water usage by Pakistan, as your co-panelists are suggesting, or is it because of climate change, shrinking glaciers, upstream consumptive use by India?
Well, it's because of a whole number of factors. But as far as the treaty's limited application is concerned, Pakistan has little, in fact, nothing to complain about. But certainly it is a domestic football in Pakistan politics, and it's easy to blame India for their shortages arising out of mismanagement, etc. I would say that the fact that the treaty protects their rights as a lower riparian so comprehensively is known to many people in Pakistan, but because it's a domestic football, it's rarely articulated.
Tilak, why is the treaty under strain in Pakistan? Is it just because it's become a domestic football, or there is a real water crisis?
There is a real water crisis, and the reason is that, let's say in 1951, Pakistan's population was about 31 million. Today is 194 million. By 2020, it will be 220 million. To feed this kind of population, Pakistan is going to require almost another Indus River, 2/3 of another Indus River. And why? It has not built storage dams, as Vivek was rightly saying. So the waters that is coming through, in fact, I was calculating, the entire Chenab, waters of the entire Chenab River are flowing into the sea, literally, because they're wasting 30 million acre feet of water. And so they suddenly find that they're going to be short of water. So who do they blame? They don't blame themselves. Their agriculture is most inefficient in the world. I mean, there are World Bank statistics, I've quoted them in my book extensively. But they will not correct those which can be corrected. And the easiest target is that you blame India.
So Vivek, Pakistanis keep saying that the Indus Water Treaty needs to be renegotiated. So who has greater interest in renegotiating it? Pakistan or India? And would it benefit India if we renegotiated the treaty?
I think this treaty has been was premised on a political premise, in the sense that it was to give Pakistan assurance that India will not dry them out. That, and the hope that Pakistan will shed its hostility, that hope has never been realized. In the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the treaty is very unpopular. It gives them nothing. So therefore, if the treaty is renegotiated, India's claim will only increase. It will never decrease. And hence it is in India's interest, it is in Pakistan's interest to adhere scrupulously to the treaty and not reopen it. But they want to do so, and voices rise, except the saner ones, for this purpose, and it's ridiculous from their viewpoint.
Raghuvan, do you agree with Vivek's analysis? And is there an exit clause to the treaty? And if there were one, would anyone opt for it?
There's no explicit exit clause to the treaty, and I doubt anyone would opt for it, because in the end, all water related issues are sensitive. Yes, Pakistan is water stressed, but so are we, and we've seen the kind of issues which arise in India out of interprovincial water sharing. So the fact that this is a contentious issue at a bilateral international level is not surprising in itself. So the treaty is meant to provide a cooperative mechanism, and that spirit is important. If you take away the cooperative mechanism, you are left with very little on how to proceed on such a sensitive issue.
So who's taking away from taking out the cooperative element from
I think the water Indus Treaty has been eroded from within, principally by Pakistani criticism over the year that it's a weapon in the hands of India and India is denying us use of our rightful waters. I think this propaganda has acquired a life of its own, and even responsible people in Pakistan, unfortunately, have come to implicitly believe in their own propaganda.
Tilak, quickly, do you think that because Pakistan sees it as a weapon to be used against India, India started playing the same game, saying, all right, you see this as a weapon, we also see it as a weapon, and we will, and then we begin saying that we will make full use of the water allotted to us, etc.
No, I think we are a far more responsible country. We are not going to. But what I would like to suggest is that if ever this question of renegotiation comes up, we should renegotiate to the extent that if Pakistan is irresponsible and is allowing 30 million acre feet of water to go into the sea, and they can't use it or they can't store it, they can't be allowed to get away with such irresponsibility. We need that water. I mean, everybody talks about the Third World War being on water. How can you allow such kind of wastage? So we, especially in the Chenab, we can do a lot on the Chenab, and so if at all anything has to be renegotiated, it is to be our position to make Pakistan behave responsibly.
Okay, we need to take a break again at this point. We'll be back in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing India's decision to attend the meeting of Indus Water Commissioners in Pakistan. Vivek, you wanted to say something before we went on.
Pakistan has obstructed every project that has been sought to be built on the western rivers. And that is the way they've really damaged the treaty, to my mind, and damaged Indian interests. And we allowed them for a long time to get away with it.
Yeah.
It was the Manmohan Singh government, to its credit, that tried to stop it and allowed the treaty, the dispute mechanism, resolution mechanisms of the treaty to work, and largely they worked in our favor. And I think the present government is also following a correct route in allowing the dispute resolution mechanisms to function.
Okay. Raghavan, would you agree with the recent UNDP report on the treaty, which says that the treaty fails to address the division of shortages in the dry years between India and Pakistan when flows are almost half as compared to the wet years?
Well, certainly the treaty could not have anticipated problems of today 60 years ago, and a lot of what is being said about the dry flows or about the groundwater utilization, these are all problems which were not anticipated then. And there are technological issues which have arisen which do need to be addressed. But if you cannot move forward on minimum issues of water sharing, and especially on construction of hydel projects upstream which are permitted within the treaty, then addressing these more complex issues is even more difficult.
Okay. Tilak, one of the implicit suggestions of the UNDP report was that India should share the deficit of the western rivers with Pakistan during lean season. Now, to my mind, and correct me if I am wrong, doesn't it go against the very concept of the treaty? Because the treaty is about sharing of rivers. Yes. It's not about sharing of waters of each river. So now, if suddenly the UNDP report says India should share the deficit in the western rivers, it's basically questioning the very foundation of the treaty.
Absolutely. Because once you share the rivers and the rivers are allocated and not the quantum of water in the rivers, see, due to climate change, there definitely is a reduction in the western rivers. Studies which have been carried out, 30-year studies, 1978 to 2008, and 10-year studies, 1998 to 2008, show there is a reduction in flows.
Yeah.
But that is not because of what India has been doing. It's a climate change, melting of glaciers, and etc. So you can't have. Why should India share the deficit?
Well, let's say the situation has changed, as everybody has seen last 50 years. So, is there a need, Vivek, to conceptualize the Indus Waters Treaty 2, a second edition of the treaty, which seeks to build on these problems, and even proposes something radical like building joint dams on the Indian side, because the terrain is more suitable on this side than on the Pakistani side, so that the water shortage and the electricity shortage in both countries can be met jointly?
Look, in an ideal world, yes. But given the nature of India-Pakistan relations and Pakistan's complete responsiveness on matters which are crucial to India, for example, terror, I think it's highly premature to talk about all that.
Raghavan?
Well, the treaty was never anticipated as being the last word on the subject, and some of the things you mentioned are in fact reflected in the language used in the treaty itself, that there should be further stages and further discussions on how to have a basin-wide approach. But as Vivek said, the fact is you have not been able to make progress on these more complex issues because the fundamentals itself are always in question. If you are constantly accused of having stolen somebody's water, what possible progress can you make on other issues?
Tilak, but quite often, these Gordian knots need to be cut, they can't be untangled. So if you have a big idea like this, of joint production of electricity, joint management of water resources, that actually can improve the atmosphere and improve ties between the two countries. Or do you think we'll continue to be as cussed as we've always been?
Look, as Vivek said, in an ideal world, that should be the best possible solution. But look at it. Can you imagine Hafiz Saeed saying, yeah, electricity is coming from where? And they also say this party is coming from Kashmir. Why should we take electricity from India? When 3-4 years ago, the question came up of buying electricity. So the question of confidence, the question of trust. And so long as Pakistan does not change its mindset and the anti-Indianness that they had in their DNA, I don't think so. These concepts are certainly worthwhile, excellent, probably ultimately, who knows, 50 years down the road, but I don't see it happening before 50 years.
All right, Vivek, since you are a pragmatist, but let me ask you a question about the ideal world. Is this kind of thing being done anywhere in the world where countries sharing resources, manage them jointly, whether it is water or, I don't know, maybe natural gas?
I suppose in the European Union all that is taking place, what you are saying, using natural resources in a sensible way between countries. But but between India and Pakistan, you take the Pakistan Army's position of that India is an eternal enemy, and will any sane person in India say that get yourself involved in these cooperative projects? I mean, I don't think.
Well, I take a little more positive view because, as I said, water sharing is contentious even when you don't have the Pakistan army. When you look at the case of Punjab and Haryana, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, and there are numerous such examples all over the world. And there'll always be two schools of thought. One will be the skeptics that how can you go forward in a situation like this, given the past history. The others will be that you have to look forward. And I certainly belong to one of those who think that you have to take the view of the positives and the positivists and the pragmatists.
Okay, so do you want to be a skeptic?
You can't have both. Positivists and pragmatics, please choose one or the other.
You have chosen. You are a skeptic. Let me ask Tilak. Tilak, if we were in an ideal world, then could we deal with water scarcity in this region of India and Pakistan by, earlier Raghavan had said about a joint river basin authority. So after all, you have the example of the Mekong River Basin Authority, you have the example of the Nile River Basin Authority, you have the Limpopo River Basin Authority in Southern Africa. Why can't we have a river basin authority? At least begin towards it.
The prerequisite for that, Bharat, will have to be that Pakistan becomes more water efficient. Even if you give them more water, that water is going to go down to the Indus, to the sea. Their water, net water from the river to the field is only 34% efficiency. 66% of that water is wasted. Canals are not lined, there is seepage, there is theft. So what is the point? The first prerequisite has to be Pakistan has to get its water infrastructure in order, spend a lot of money in investment in the water infrastructure, and then you can certainly talk to them about it.
Okay, last word to the skeptic.
No, I think let's keep hoping that one day Pakistan changes and then we'll address all these issues in a positive way. Till then, let's be pragmatic.
Well, I would agree. You have to be pragmatic. But I think part of being pragmatic is also being positive. Otherwise, you'll remain stuck where you are or where you were in the past.
There you are, Vivek. He's told you off.
I've seen this.
On that happy note, we have to end this discussion. I'd like to thank all of you, Tilak Devesh, Vivek Karju, TCA Raghavan, for participating in this discussion. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again as usual next week. Until then, goodbye and thanks for watching India's World.